Week 6 of the Big 12 football season is in the books. Welcome in. I'm Pete Mundo. We are Heartland College Sports. We cover the Big 12. And if you are new to the show, or if you're back and you have not yet done it, subscribe. Hit that thumbs up button right below the video. It makes a world of difference. We are approaching the halfway mark of the college football season. This show is on fire. And I want to take a little bit of credit, but it's really because of you. You guys have blown this show up this year, so thank you so much. Please subscribe, hit that thumbs up, and let's talk some Big 12 football because Week 6 was a lot of fun. Now, it wasn't a lot of fun if you were a fan of certain teams. And frankly, I think the disasters in the Big 12 are right now the biggest stories in the Big 12. And which disaster do you want to start off with? I'm going to start off with Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State football is a dumpster fire right now. Mike Gundy is 0-3 in Big 12 play for the first time since 2005. This is not a blip on the radar. This is not Mike Gundy having a bad game or two. This is right now a dumpster fire of a college football team. And the problem is it's the same team essentially that got to a Big 12 championship last year. That's the problem. It's the same group of guys that just don't have any juice, don't have any motivation, and for whatever reason are getting their butts absolutely handed to them. What happened to Oklahoma State football on Saturday was an outright embarrassment. Look at these numbers for Oklahoma State football. Oklahoma State was outgained 558 to 227. In their 38-14 loss at home to West Virginia. They were 3 of 10 on third downs. West Virginia was 9 of 15. They had more penalties. They lost the turnover battle. They had 36 rushing yards, 1.7 yards a carry. West Virginia had 389. That is an embarrassment for a team that thought it has a Heisman Trophy contender on it in Ollie Gordon. Alan Bowman, I don't know what's going to happen there. I'd move off of him at this point, but here's part of the issue with the new NIL rules and everything else going on in the landscape of college football. Part of the problem now is you're paying these guys, someone's paying these guys, some donors paying these guys, and guess what? The donors are like, what did I pay this dude for? He's not even playing. It's not like it's pro sports where you bench a guy because, well, he's not getting the job done and the money's guaranteed, but who cares? You have all the drama and the politics now of NIL where big donors that you see every day, or at least on a fairly regular basis, are the ones who are getting hosed here. Like somebody got convinced to give Oklahoma State football a lot of money for Ollie Gordon and to a lesser extent, Alan Bowman. And they're not performing. So what do you do? For whatever reason, Mike Gundy doesn't want to go to Zane Flores. Fine. He's got 2 weeks to figure out what to do, though, because this thing is absolutely on fire. And Oklahoma State football is a team that was the best home team in the country other than Alabama the last few years when you look at home records. And 2 of these 3 conference losses have been at home, and Saturday's was an embarrassment. That is one of the most embarrassing losses I've seen for Mike Gundy, especially on his home turf. I mean, you can talk about South Alabama, but I mean, a Big 12 game where you think Gundy's going to show up in a big way, that was the antithesis of that on Saturday. Now, on the other side, hey, if you're a West Virginia fan, don't look now, but you're 2-0 in conference play. If I would have told you after a 1-2 start to non-con, the loss to Penn State, the loss to Pitt, you'd be 2-0, please, you'd take it in a heartbeat. Don't tell me you wouldn't. You'd take it in a heartbeat. Now, suddenly, the Iowa State game this weekend is a fascinating game between 2 teams who are 2-0 in the Big 12. But West Virginia, even Garrett Green goes down. Nico was tearing it up. I mean, did you see that truck drive? He just punished an Oklahoma State linebacker on a play that we shared on our X page. You can find us there at Heartland_CS. But you look at the way this running game just absolutely dominated. With Jaheim White, Garrett Green, C.J. Donaldson, they showed no respect for the Oklahoma State defense. And why would you? When you look at what Neil Brown probably said to himself, he's watching tape of the Arkansas game. He's watching tape of the Utah game. And he said, frankly, these guys don't look all that good in the trenches. And that's exactly what they did. They took advantage of it. Had a couple of sacks, bunch of tackles for loss, had themselves a very good day, couple of interceptions on the afternoon as well. And it was everything you would want to see if you're a West Virginia fan. And that's exactly how West Virginia wins games. They get ahead. Garrett Green's comfortable in the running game and in the passing game. They work hand in hand off of each other. They're not a team that is going to come from behind and beat you. That's not who they are. But they're a team that when they get their way, when they get going downhill, they can play with the best in this conference. But they're much better playing with lead. I know it's cliche to say everybody's better with lead, but you know what I mean. This team, this West Virginia Mountaineers team, is significantly better playing with a lead than it is playing from behind. And the Mountaineers are sitting there at 2-0 and a half game back of first place in the Big 12 after a tough non-conference slate. So all in all, if you're a West Virginia fan, you feel good about things. And listen, now you got a stretch here coming up if you're West Virginia, where you say to yourself, Iowa State, Kansas State, at Arizona. You go 2-1, you're in the mix because you close with Cincinnati, Baylor, UCF, and Texas Tech. Why not West Virginia? This conference is wildly up for grabs right now. So why not the Mountaineers? All right. The other dumpster fires right now, I'm just going to go with these games in order of dumpster fires for the time being, but we'll cover all the games here on Heartland College Sports. I'm Pete Mundo. Thanks for joining us. As always, we appreciate you doing that. If you're just coming in, hit the thumbs up right below the video. Dumpster fire number 2, Baylor. Dave Aranda takes his team to Ames, and they go up 14-3 on Iowa State. And then after that, they just get absolutely smoked, and they get outscored 40-7. That is embarrassing. I don't know what Dave Aranda's end game is here. I don't know what Baylor's end game is with Dave Aranda. Because you can look at this and you can say, hey, Colorado game, Hail Mary. If not, they win it. BYU, they get in a big hole. They come back. They come up just short. The Iowa State game, they're up early, and then they collapse. In the end, he's not winning games. He's not. And how much longer you want to give him is up to, obviously, the powers that be at Baylor. But at what point do you say, gosh, that 2021 Big 12 championship is now 3 years ago, and we're not seeing the kind of progress we need to justify keeping Dave Aranda around as the head coach? Now, I also have to look at this game and give a lot of credit to Iowa State. You know, listen, I have been accused over the years of being an Iowa State homer. If you have been around Heartland College Sports for a while, you will know that in 2020, even before that, 2020 was the year Iowa State got to the Big 12 championship game and lost to Oklahoma. But prior to that, I was and still am, very gung-ho on Iowa State, but I was called an Iowa State homer. This year, I've been saying, I just need to see more from Iowa State. And Iowa State fans, it's cool, I love you guys, but they'd come in on YouTube and on the website and on the forums at heartlandcollegesports.com, which are free. You can sign up for yourself. And they'd say, you hate Iowa State. You know, you're not giving us the benefit of the doubt. Well, I will start to now, because that was a damn impressive performance on Saturday against Baylor. They get in a hole, but they dig out of it, and they dig out of it with a very effective and efficient running game. When you see Jalen Jackson, Carson Hansen doing what they did, leading that running attack, Rocco Beck was very efficient and very effective slinging the ball around. Jaden Higgins keeps scoring touchdowns. Jalen Noel with some big plays. That is an offense combined with this John Haycock defense that is going to be in the mix at the very end for a Big 12 championship if this keeps up. There is no doubt in my mind about it. It's a defense that gave up 7 points in the final 43 minutes, And you know this much about Iowa State. And I'm preaching to the choir here for Iowa State fans, but if you're maybe just a Big 12 fan, maybe you're new to the Big 12, Matt Campbell and this program notoriously gets better and better and better as a season progresses. It's why Iowa State coming into this game, hadn't been 4-0 in over 20 years. Because as much of a great coach that Matt Campbell has been, his teams progress as the season goes along. Well, now you look at Iowa State and you're sitting there at 5-0, and it's like, well, okay, if it's only going to get better, that's going to be pretty damn good. And now they're sitting there with a 5-0 record for the first time since 1980. I mean, was Matt Campbell even alive in 1980? I'd have to look that up real quick. It's probably dicey. He was. He wasn't even a year old. He was born in November of 79, but he was technically around. That's how long it's been for Iowa State since they were 5-0 to start a season. So that comeback, and not just the comeback, I mean, they were home, so you expected them to make a run. But the way they just completely dominated Baylor after getting in that early hole was a signal to me that, you know what, man, this team is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And it was really, I want to say it was that interception in the end zone in the third quarter when Baylor was making a move down into Iowa State territory, and Sawyer Robertson had his pass intercepted in the end zone. And at that point, that just felt like the nail in the coffin. Even though it was still a one-score game at that point, it just felt like such a momentum shift for each of those teams in that spot. And then Iowa State takes it back down the field, scores a touchdown on a very methodical drive, I will add. And it ended with Jaden Higgins in the end zone. And at that point, it was a 2-score lead. And it just felt like it was all Iowa State. And after that, Baylor's offense did nothing. That was the last drive for Baylor's offense that was worth a damn. They went 3-and-out, 3-and-out, 3-and-out in their final 3 drives after that interception in the end zone. So it really was just a gut punch for a Baylor team that was really trying to get itself back into the game, and they just couldn't. They just couldn't do it. I mean, there's nothing else to say. They just could not get it done in that spot. And you saw it playing out in real time. So Iowa State taking on West Virginia, that is suddenly a fascinating game going into week 7 of the Big 12 football season. And I can't wait for it because of what's going to be on the line between those two teams. And for Baylor, I hate to say it, but now the entire conversation in Waco is simply around the future of Dave Aranda and what to do there and what is going to be done there. That's it. All right, Greg, this is Rocktober for Rocco Becht. You know, it doesn't have the same ring as Brocktober for Brock Purdy, but I like it. Rocktober, Brocktober, sign me up, baby. I'm all in. We know that Matt Campbell against the spread, and shame on me, Matt Campbell against the spread is the 3rd best coach over the last 20 years in the month of October. I gave you that little nugget last week on the show. Mike Gundy and Matt Campbell are in the top 3 coaches of the last 20 years against the spread in the month of October. Gundy got blown out, did not cover. Campbell obviously did. And while I'm at it, I will share with you my picks. Went 1-2 on Saturday. I was on, and I'm done with Baylor, okay? 3rd week in a row, I gave you Baylor to cover, and shame on me. Okay, shame on me. I'm going to slap myself upside the head. I just whacked myself in the face a couple of times. Shame on me, 3rd week in a row. Dave Aranda is now costing me money. Unbelievable. And I was feeling pretty good at 14-3, and then they just totally bombed out. So I gave you Baylor plus the 12.5. I gave you Kansas plus the 2.5, which once again looked good until the last minute of the game. No one knows how to blow a game like Kansas this season. And then I gave you Texas Tech plus 6.5, which ended up hitting. So 1-2 on the picks this week. Last week was 2-1. So we're kind of treading water right now as I go through my picks. But listen, I'm not giving myself an excuse, but this league is damn near impossible to figure out. You know that, and I know that. It is really tough. All right. Meantime, you look at some of the other duds right now around the Big 12 and where things are going totally haywire. And it's Kansas. Kansas blew another fourth quarter lead, as they have done all year long. And as Arizona State was driving down the field in that final minute, if you're watching that game, and I was, did anybody have any confidence that Kansas was going to stop Arizona State on that drive? I had zero confidence. There was no doubt in my mind Sam Leavitt was putting that ball into the end zone on that final drive. Kansas looked worn down. They had zero confidence. And you know what? It's like it was as methodical a drive. I mean, it wasn't methodical. It was a fast 2-minute drill drive. But it's like they were getting whatever they want. They were running the ball. They were slinging the ball around. I mean, Sam Leavitt's using his legs on that final drive. It was like, of course, this is how it's going to go for Kansas. This is how it's gone all season for the Jayhawks. They can't get a big stop at the end of a game. And, you know, this is the game where, and one of the reasons I thought that KU was a good pick here in this game is that I thought that people were selling Jalen Daniels stock too soon. I said the talent's still there. He really hasn't played in 2 years. He has a new offensive coordinator. He's just got to get comfortable. He's just got to get back in a groove. That's where I thought this was going to go for Jalen Daniels. And I thought that he was being undervalued in this spot on the road against Arizona State. And it wasn't Jalen Daniels' fault this game went the way it did. He wasn't great, but he was not the reason they lost the game by any stretch of the imagination. You would have thought to yourself, 31 points on the road. If I'd given you Jalen Daniels' stat line before the game, if you were a Kansas fan, you would have taken that in a heartbeat. No turnovers, threw a couple of touchdowns, had a long run with his legs. You would have signed up for that game yesterday from Jalen Daniels, and you would have never looked back. But the defense, I mean, that's what it came down to, the defense. Kansas's defense got carved up on the ground for 7 yards a carry. Scatabo had 186. Leavitt had 77, along with tossing 4 touchdown passes. That's what this game came down to. Kansas could not really get any pressure, couldn't get in the backfield, and could not stop the run to save their lives. And that's what ultimately cost them in this game. So for Kansas right now, the issues have been on both sides of the ball, but they're really right now looking at the defense and saying, how do we correct that side? Because every single one of these losses you've looked at and you've said, Illinois had the lead. UNLV had the lead late. West Virginia had the lead late. TCU didn't really have the lead late, but you did have a lead in that game and you blew it. Right? I mean, you did. You led in that game as well. You had a second half lead and you blew it. And then you had a lead here in the final couple of minutes against Arizona State and you blew it. And yes, that reflects poorly on the coaching staff. I mean, we love Lance Leipold. He's done an incredible job turning around this program that's been dead for 15 years. He is unbelievable in terms of what he's done at KU that nobody thought was possible. But he's having a bad year. The coaching staff's having a bad year. It's okay to say it. It's fair to say that. You can't come away with any other conclusion other than that based on how the season has gone for KU thus far. They're 1-5. Some of you are picking KU to get to a college football playoff. I wasn't. I had them at 4-5 in the Big 12, and I got blasted by KU fans saying, like, how dare you? You're a KU hater. It's like, well, Jalen hasn't played in 2 years. You lost an offensive star at OC, and I'm not so sure on the defense, to be quite honest. And unfortunately, it's playing out way worse than any of us would have expected. And now if you're KU, you're looking at this and you're like, gosh, we've got games to play at Arrowhead Stadium. We're going to have a dead Arrowhead Stadium for some of these games because we've won one game this year. This is turning into a horrible season for KU. Now, for Arizona State, this was a big game, obviously. They were coming off the bye week. They had lost at Texas Tech. They were welcoming in another, old Big 12 team, so to speak. And They got that offense going. They got some mojo back. They got a little pep in their step, and they really needed this game because this game was followed by Utah and then a couple of road games over the next few weeks. So if there was a game where Arizona State was going to feel good about itself in Big 12 play and get a solid win, it felt like this was their opportunity for Kenny Dillingham to do just that. And that's exactly what they did. So I don't want to take anything away from what Arizona State did in this game. They deserve a lot of credit for coming back, for not getting down, for Sam Leavitt's leadership, and for rallying in front of that home crowd and just executing down that stretch, not getting rattled, responding. That's something that shows the backbone of a team. And Arizona State, listen, the wins don't look as good as they did when they happened. But for a team that was picked to be near the bottom of the Big 12, to be sitting here right now at 4-1 going into this Utah game, there's not an Arizona State fan who would not have taken that before the season began. Every single one of you would rightfully so take this game. You've got a young rising star as head coach. You got a quarterback that keeps getting better and more confident. And what more can you ask for? You had a sellout crowd. Tempe has some juice to it for the first time in a few years. And even on a day when it's 107 degrees at kickoff, the hottest October game in Tempe dating back to 2000, you got a packed house. Your fan base is bought in. The alumni base is bought into this team. And now you're getting set for Utah. So these are good times right now in Tempe. Life is good. You guys are going to have an awesome atmosphere against the Utes this weekend. And all in all, Arizona State fans should be absolutely thrilled with where their program is trending and how things are looking there in Tempe. A lot of fun. Congratulations to you guys. The last dumpster fire team I've got to talk about that played this week, and we're going to talk about all the Big 12 games. If you have not yet, hit subscribe on the channel. That continues to help this show grow. You guys are blowing this thing up by the thousands here to start this college football season, so I thank you for that. I'm Pete Mundo, and we appreciate you being here. TCU losing to Houston 30-19. Sonny Dykes' run to a national championship feels like 2 decades ago, not 2 years ago. That's how bad this program has gotten in a short 2-year window. Now, I will talk about Houston. I will give them credit for making the quarterback change to Chris. Good on Willie Fritz for making that move. But still, this Houston team has scored a combined 0 points its last 2 games, last 8 quarters. They put a 30 spot on TCU. And TCU's offense, just turned the ball over left and right. What really sold it to me was the fumble by J.P. Richardson on that slant route on Friday night, if you were watching this game. And he's as solid and sturdy a hand as there is for TCU. And when he's getting popped and fumbling the ball, it just feels like something's wrong with the program. And something is wrong with the program. It's broken right now. It is. Sonny Dykes continues to say after these games, we practice well. I don't know why this happened. I'm shocked by the way our guys came out. Sonny Dykes saying he is surprised by these outcomes is as concerning as anything else. It's like he doesn't know why this keeps happening. He can't figure out why the team is playing the way it is and why they're not performing up to the levels they need to be performing at. And when the coach is like, I don't know why we're looking the way we're looking because we don't look like this during the week, that is symptomatic of a much larger issue. And that is a coach that doesn't have the pulse of the program. And ever since they lost Garrett Riley as offensive coordinator, he was here the first year of the national championship. He left. They bring in Kendall Briles, who, say what you want. It was not a popular hire with the fan base for obvious reasons. Things have not gone the right way. Defensively, they made a change at DC, right? They go to the 4-2-5 this year. That has not looked very good for most of the season. Let's be honest. You gave up 66 to SMU. You gave up 30 to a Houston team that had been shut out the last 2 games. It is fair to wonder right now whether or not Sonny Dykes can turn this thing around and be the coach that he was 2 years ago. And let's not forget, if Chandler Morris doesn't go down in the first game of the season against Colorado. Who knows how that 2022 season goes? And I know that every team needs a little luck to get to where it ultimately gets to, but that 2022 TCU team got a lot of breaks. I'm not just talking about like there was the famous end of the Baylor game where they run on the field and they do a walk-off field goal. Like there were moments like that. But man, that TCU team caught a lot of breaks. And I'm not saying anybody should apologize for those breaks. But I'm telling you, that season was now a long time ago. And Sonny Dykes needs to do something here in the next few games to prove that barely making a bowl game or missing a bowl game is not going to be the new standard for TCU, because they are trending towards that, which would be the third time in 4 years that TCU will have missed a bowl game, which is completely unacceptable based on where Gary Patterson had this program with the Horned Frogs. Now, on the other side, I've talked a lot about liking Willie Fritz, giving Willie Fritz time. And the first move that was made was moving off of Donovan Smith and moving to Zeon Chris at quarterback, and it paid off in a very effective way. Sometimes you just have to do it. Memo to Mike Gundy. Sometimes you just have to move on from a certain quarterback, Mike Gundy. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Okay? And that's what Willie Fritz did. And it gave this team a little bit of juice. He was a great dual threat ability guy. I mean, he wasn't outstanding throwing the ball, but he was efficient. But also, Houston put him in a spot where he was taking high percentage throws and making high percentage throws. Only threw for $141, but you know what? He completed 15 of 18. And then he rushed for almost 100 yards. So for Houston, who has shown ability on the defensive side of the ball, they needed to give you something on offense to balance it out. And that's exactly what you got from this team on Friday night in Fort Worth. So Houston's the kind of program that is just trying to find the small wins. And when you find the real ones, heck, don't look back. And now, if you're Houston, you got a week off, and then you've got Kansas on the road, and that could be another opportunity, if you're Willie Fritz, to get a nice victory against a team that is really struggling and is losing a ton of confidence as well. So if you're buying Houston stock, and I'm not saying for this year, I'm just saying in general, well, you should have done it last week, because I've been on Houston. I've said, listen, it's going to take some time, but trust the process with this coaching staff. And the first move they made, that's tough to do when you got a veteran quarterback in Donovan Smith, who's been around the program, who hung with you through the offseason, didn't leave when Dana got fired. To move on from that guy is tough. But it says a lot about all the people in that locker room and the coaching staff that they did it, that it's helped this team. It's given the team a bit of a confidence boost. And now you go into your bye week feeling like, hey, you know what? If nothing else, we can hang in this conference, and things are going to get better. So there you go with the Houston TCU game. Now, the games that we have not yet talked about, two we have to talk about still. Let's do the late night game. Texas Tech beating Arizona on the road 28-22, and your Red Raiders are in sole possession of first place in the Big 12 Conference at 5-1 and 3-0 in league play. Goodness gracious, how about those Red Raiders? Game started at 10 p.m. Central Time, ended at 1:40 in the morning. So we didn't have an 11 a.m. game yesterday in the Big 12. So the game started at about 3 o'clock with Oklahoma State, West Virginia, ended at 1:40 in the morning. But when you look at what this Texas Tech team did, it was ugly. They really didn't play that well. Couple of fumbles, bad on third downs, several penalties, but winning ugly and winning ugly on the road against a team that was coming off a massive victory like Arizona at Utah, back in front of their home crowd. For you to play the way that you did if you're Texas Tech, and Taj Brooks, who had himself a tough game from the standpoint of having the fumbles, but then also having 3 big touchdowns, you say to yourself, that's what leaders do. They bounce back. And that's exactly what Taj Brooks did in this game. He bounced back. So that's where you look at it and you say to yourself, okay, I like where this team is at. I like what Joey McGuire is doing with this team. And you like the fact that they have won games where maybe they haven't been the better team or they haven't played their best. All right. And that's absolutely worth something when you look back on it and you say to yourself, wow, that's what matters in these games. Do our best players step up even when they screw up and help us get this game into the win column? And that's exactly what happened in this game on Saturday night. Baron Morton was far from outstanding, but they found a way. And that's what good teams do. That's what winning teams do. They find a way. And in Morton's case, didn't have a great day, but didn't turn the ball over. But then you also look at the Texas Tech defense, and they were able to get some pressure on Fafita. And that's something that a lot of us didn't necessarily expect because they were missing some key guys on that side of the ball. But they were able to get some pressure, and they were able to cause enough havoc in that backfield. They threw the Arizona offense off their game a little bit. The offense made too many mistakes, and they had some trouble. Fafita struggled with his accuracy through a couple of interceptions. Arizona went away from the run game at times, despite the fact that it seemed like it was working for them as well. So the play calling was questionable at times as well. And even McMillan had himself a costly fumble with just over a couple of minutes left. And that helped Texas Tech take a 2-possession lead. So when you look at that game in particular, you see mistakes made by veterans on both sides, but only one team, and it happened to be the road team in Texas Tech, also had its veterans overcome some of those mistakes to get themselves a win in this game and improve to 3-0 in Big 12 play. They're at the top of the Big 12 standings, and that game against Abilene Christian feels like a lifetime ago. And for Texas Tech, I thought they'd come out of the gates hot. And if you go back and you watch my predictions from before the season, I said Texas Tech could be 7-1 when they go to November. And that is looking more and more likely by the week. They've got a bye week, and then they're at Baylor, or they're home to Baylor, and then at TCU. If they're not 7-1 at this point, that would be a surprise. So at 7-1 and 5-0 in the Big 12 play going into November, man, it's shaping up pretty well right now for Texas Tech. The ball is in their court, and they are in a great position as we get into the second week of October. So congratulations to the Red Raiders. What an absolutely exciting season this has been. Enjoy the bye week, but don't overlook the last 2 games of the month against Baylor and TCU, because you got to win those to feel like you got a chance going into the final month of the regular season. It is going to be absolutely wild here the next couple of weeks in the Big 12. And last but not least, let's spend a few minutes here on UCF losing at Florida 24-13. This one's frustrating because I thought the Big 12 needed this game. Florida is a bottom feeder in the SEC. Billy Napier's on the hot seat. And UCF is a team that some of us think can compete atop the Big 12. I mentioned some of my good picks, so I'll also mention some of my bad picks. And right now, my UCF pick to get to a Big 12 championship game looks like a bad pick. I had Utah and UCF. And there's no way that this UCF team gets itself to a Big 12 championship game. The defense cannot stop a nosebleed. And then offensively, they are too predicated on the run. And Florida's like, you know what? Let's see you throw the ball, KJ Jefferson. We're going to load up the box, and we're going to stop the run. And that's what you saw them do. This is a second straight game where UCF did not do a good job on the ground. They had 4 yards a carry last week against Colorado. They had 2.7 yards a carry in this game against Florida. 2.7 yards a carry with that kind of firepower in that backfield. It was a bad showing. And KJ Jefferson just doesn't have the arm and the accuracy where teams are going to basically be scared of him. So they're loading up the box, and they're saying, you know what? Beat us. Throw the football. Beat us there. And UCF is not really able to do that right now. And that is hurting them in a big way in these last couple of games. And there's the formula. And if the teams that you're playing against feel like they've got the formula to beat you, well, guess what? That's a bad sign for Gus Malzahn's team. And this was tough because this was a good spot for UCF to try to get a win. They were going up against a Gators team that had not done a good job in stopping the run. They were 109th in the country in stopping the run. And they come into this game and they just totally locked down UCF's running attack, which is the team's strength. They were second in the nation in rushing yards per game coming into this one. And instead, they got completely manhandled by Florida. So it's a bad loss for UCF. It's a bad loss for the Big 12. And I know that there are going to be conversations now for some who are going to say, this is exactly what Gus Malzahn does. He recruits well. We get a lot of hype. We think that we're going to have, this great season. And then the development's not there. The in-game coaching is not there. And we end up with a disappointing season. And right now it's fair to feel that way if you're UCF, because Florida is a game that you really thought you could win going into the Swamp and getting a victory over a team that has been way down on its luck in the Florida Gators, but they just couldn't do it. But you know what? Here's the thing for UCF. There is opportunity in front of you. They've got Cincinnati at home, then they're at Iowa State, and then home to BYU. Those Iowa State BYU games are huge, absolutely huge for this team. And if they can get one of those wins, maybe both, then the season totally changes for the UCF Knights. But they've got to figure out a way to keep defenses honest and not just have them loading up the box right now against the running attack, because basically what you're seeing is teams do not fear the passing game from the Knights. And frankly, I don't blame them one bit. I'm Pete Mundo. We are HeartlandCollegeSports.com. We appreciate you guys being here as always as we recap and react Week 6 in the Big 12 Conference. Hit that subscribe button below the video if you haven't yet on YouTube or on iTunes or Spotify. Thank you so much for helping this show continue to grow each and every week. But there are still thousands of you who have not yet subscribed. So make sure you're subscribed. Hit that thumbs up as well on YouTube. That helps us tremendously. We don't ask you for anything. We really don't. All of our stuff is free. We want to keep it free, though, and this is how you can help us do it. And if you're not yet on the forums, please do subscribe. Sign up at HeartlandCollegeSports.com. Those are free as well. Thank you guys for a great show as always. We so appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon. Go Big 12.